Hello everyone, and as always, welcome back to yet another Mortal Kombat video on the channel. Now, seeing as we've been covering a lot of the lost, erased and removed characters throughout Mortal Kombat's history, I figured that today it would finally be time to tackle a topic I've known about for a very long time now, and that is the mysterious missing Xbox 360 exclusive character for Mortal Kombat 9. Now, to actually tackle this topic, I do have to throw on a bit of my detective cap here and do a deep dive analysis of Mortal Kombat 9 to take a look at its data mined content, as well as interviews that date as far back to that of 2011, as it will give us some hints and fragments of information as to who possibly was this lost and cancelled guest character. Now, it's been no secret that this has been a long mystery in the community, and honestly, something that hasn't really been resolved to this very day. However, with my collective time of having covered this series, the missing games, the missing characters, the cut content, I do think that we now finally have a bit of a rough outline and idea for who this character was. This video is more or less designed to serve as the closest thing to a feasible answer, so whilst I won't be able to 100,000,000% confirm this, think of this as giving us a 99% chance and idea of what was meant to be. Now, for the uninitiated, of those first introduced to MK following 9, the 9th installment in the series was a really important tipping point in the franchise. Not just being the first title released under the Warner Bros. Banner, but also having been the first time the series had ever been rebooted. Truth be told, for those unaware, the reboot of the franchise was in fact something in the works for quite a while, having been originally planned and envisioned all the way back since Armageddon. So its sequel, Mortal Kombat 8, was always destined to be a pivotal point in the series. In fact, I made an entire video on that I am gonna link here if you are interested in delving deeper into that topic. But anyway, with the series' return back to form, having been thrown back into the cultural zeitgeist, there were a number of different contributing factors to its success. But one of the biggest things with Mortal Kombat 9 would actually be the inclusion of its first ever guest character, the Bane of Olympus, God of War's Kratos. A character who was really fit and tailored for the universe, being a welcomed inclusion to the roster. But of course, this wasn't a release widely available to everyone, with Kratos strictly being reserved as a PlayStation exclusive character. So naturally, the inclusion of a console exclusive guest did stir up the question of who and where exactly was the Xbox exclusive character. Now, you gotta keep in mind that at the time of MK9's release, the somewhat console generation war was still actively thriving, with Xbox and PlayStation at neck and neck with each other like never before. So the absence of an exclusive character did naturally raise questions with what was going on here. So what do we actually know? Well, from digging quite deep into this rabbit hole, we do have some details and words from Ed Boon himself during a Eurogamer interview in 2011, where he would say the following: "I'm not allowed to talk too much about it, but I can tell you we certainly wanted to do an exclusive for 360. But that's all I can say. It's not a decision we made where we said, oh, let's do one for the 360. Anyone who's really knowledgeable about the Xbox video games, the big titles, names like Master Chief from Halo, Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War, and any other exclusive titles, is going to come up in conversation and talking about it. So clearly, we've discussed it. So coming off this interview, it's very transparent that the opportunity was there for a 360 exclusive character, and it really does sound like the team was very open to this idea. So what exactly went wrong here? Well, and keep in mind this is purely hypothetical, there could be a number of different contributing factors as to why this opportunity was declined. And truthfully, the unique and obscure nature of Kratos, who, might I add, to this date is the only video game character added to an MK game, makes it extremely hard to decipher what the licensing agreement was with Kratos. We have no idea how guest characters work for video games, whilst future guest DLC characters would be more transparent, as we come to learn that they buy the movie license of the character, not the character themselves. We're completely unaware of how this works on the video game side of things, and whether or not the deals work out the same way. Now, as for the reason why Xbox declined having a console exclusive character, could quite possibly be a number of different factors there, from a lack of interest to licensing issues to maybe even the studio itself being quite protective of their character. It's impossible to 100% know the issues of the studio, as they've never verbally come out to give out the finer details. But I will say that that last one is 100% possible, and wouldn't be the only time that an issue like this has plagued the series, as MK vs DC did also have such restrictions on the DC roster side of things, with fatalities being censored and severely neutered, and instead including an alternative heroic brutality. Thus, with the article covered, it now naturally all brings us onto who exactly was the guest character. Well, I do believe that from prior interviews, creative details, and interests, that it would be none other than Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War. Because whilst he is name dropped alongside the Chief in the interview, the main reason why Marcus was the main big pick isn't just from the setting nor toolkit, but actually the overall impact the Gears of War franchise had on Mortal Kombat. Although the series have never officially crossed over into each other, it was revealed all the way back during the Midway era of games, more specifically during MK vs DC interviews. But upon the conclusion of the 3D trilogy, when Ed Boon was looking to reboot the franchise, he gained inspiration for this creative decision from the first Gears of War, and there's a quote from this time period that does say the following. Ed Boon talked up the then unnamed 8th installment in the franchise, describing Mortal Kombat 8 at the time as a very dark, serious and gritty take on the series. A back-to-basics reboot that was free of vibrant, saturated colours. It was heavily inspired by the looks of Gears of War, so the ending of Armageddon was always deemed as a true definitive ending for that timeline, with Mortal Kombat 8 being the initial reboot of the series. But of course, such ideas, plans and concepts would change as a reboot would be shelved in favour of a mainline crossover installment, Mortal Kombat vs DC. Thus now, if we're drawing lines, similarities and most importantly, influence, then I do really think that it goes without saying here that Marcus Phoenix was always going to be the natural pick for Ed Boon. And again, whilst Ed Boon, NRS, nor anyone official at Xbox has ever come out saying anything, as it's very clear that NDAs are in place, I think it's pretty safe to say what direction and what character they were looking for. And honestly, I do actually find it to be a solid inclusion in that regard, because it paints both console exclusive characters in very different contrasting lights, with PlayStation's Kratos feeding into the more fantastical side of MK, whilst Marcus Phoenix himself delves into the more military heavy side of the franchise. Both have very different contrasting styles of play, but ones that are extremely unique to both consoles here. And to further somewhat solidify this point, it's not like that militant focus and angle would be dropped, as it was something that the team would focus on coming into Mortal Kombat X as well as 11, with both games having an incredibly heavily focused perspective from the Special Forces. So it's very clear in my mind that Gears of War may have been the influential precursor for what we did wind up getting, even if Marcus Phoenix did not make the cut. Unfortunately though, beyond the information from these interviews, there's not too much else to touch upon here, thus marking all the information that we do currently know to this day regarding the secret identity of the Xbox exclusive character for Mortal Kombat 9. So with that said, this has been a particularly fun but interesting video to break down and analyze, as it's something I've been sitting on now for a while, but a question that I myself really wanted to dig into. Whilst this isn't a 100% confirmed answer, I think there's enough information here for us to have an educated guess as to who exactly they were looking at. So with that said and everything covered here, what are your thoughts on the lost opportunity of Marcus Phoenix's inclusion for Mortal Kombat 9? How would you have wanted him to play? Would you have preferred a different mascot? Please do comment down below, as I'd love to hear what you have to say. But for now everyone, that has been it for me. So as always everyone, stay strong, stay well, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one.